Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finney, who fires the three and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Schutte from Outsider.com, co-hosting as he does each and every day as well. John, the producer behind the wheels, keeping us between the white lines. Of course, we're brought to you by our great friends at Andy Moore Honda, where you can go to andymorehonda.com and find the greatest selection on new and used vehicles, or Endeavor Hospitality and their Wow Club and their great network of restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. Great places like BB's Market, where you can find the absolute best meats, full-size bakery, and the best customer service around this area. Welcome in. As I said, lots to talk about, Dustin, as a gigantic sports night erupted last night. First of all, we have to start off with a little bit of sad news as the Bengals-Bills Monday night game, much anticipated game, was postponed in almost an unprecedented moment when Damar Hamlin goes down after making a tackle. He gets up, takes a few steps, and then collapses. Apparently his heart stopped. They got his heart restarted. And last we heard he's in some condition. Also, prayers go out to him and his family. Very, very weird moment to play out on national television, Dustin.
Yeah, it was. And I think we all understood kind of the gravity of that situation when you saw the way that the players were reacting, the coaches were reacting. It's unlike anything we've probably ever seen in sports. I know I've never seen anything quite like that. I know there was a Florida basketball player who in maybe 2 years ago, or maybe it was last year, who endured a similar sort of situation. And thankfully he turned out to be okay. And so you hope that Damar Hamlin can pull through. But there's one thing I wanted to say about this situation, Jim, and I don't know that this is going to be a popular opinion. I don't know that this is going to be something that people agree with me with. We have a real problem with, and this is tough. I have a big problem with people who try to use these type of situations as a platform on Twitter. There's a very real problem,
or any place
with what I feel like people are trying to craft the perfect comment, tweet, Instagram post, whatever it might be, in an attempt to look morally superior, in an attempt to get retweets and likes. A young man's life is not the time to be doing that. So please ask yourself before you send off some of this stuff, why am I doing this? And I'm not talking about a simple tweet that says thoughts and prayers, or, you throw up the hand gesture, whatever it might be. It just does not sit well with me when I see these long paragraphs of people that I know are just trying to get likes, retweets, and look like they care more about the situation. Everybody that watched that knew something was wrong. Everybody was shaken by what we saw last night. And so I would just ask that before you fire off a tweet about a situation like that, ask yourself, why am I doing this? And I just wanted to say that.
Well, obviously, appreciate that. But anybody that's doing that, probably, it doesn't matter if they think about it or not. They're already thinking about themselves first, unfortunately. But let's hope that situation ends up in a positive one. One positive that has come out of it, he was running a GoFundMe account for kids that had been hit hard by the pandemic, I think. That was for. He had hoped to raise $2,500, and it is now in excess of $3 million.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very positive thing to come out of this. Hopefully he comes through okay as well, so he can enjoy the hearts, the best wishes of people that have done that. And so, yeah, let's hope that there is a great outcome to that. And thoughts and prayers continue, like I said, to his family and to him and his doctors in the Tritium. Lots more to get to on the program today. Last night in college basketball, of course, Purdue loses at home to Rutgers. We'll talk about that. Tamar Bates is expected to join the starting lineup for Indiana after we talked about that yesterday. Let's see. College football, man, there was a ton to talk about in yesterday's game. Not a great day to be a Purdue Boilermaker fan, as
No.
not only do they number one basketball team lose, but their football team was absolutely demoralized and embarrassed, crushed by LSU. I didn't even see the final score. It was 49-7, I think, the last I saw, or something like that. But yeah, this took absolute crushing. Penn State wins the Rose Bowl after Utah's quarterback was forced to leave the game. But how about USC losing to Tulane? I didn't watch that game, see that game, wasn't paying attention to going into that. I don't know if that's a byproduct of them losing that game to Utah and not getting into the national championship, because we're talking about a team that they win that final game, they're playing in the national championship instead of TCU. But then they turn around and lose to Tulane. So I don't know. Did they have a bunch of opt-outs after that? Was it just the mental whole aspect of it? I don't know everything that went into that. The Pacers won last night. Dustin pointed out to me that's the 6th out of their last 7 wins. The bench comes up huge with a 54-7 edge over the Raptors. So give all the credit to the bench players for the Pacers and that gigantic win. So a ton to talk about today. Of course, might as well go back to Purdue and that loss to Rutgers. But Rutgers is a tough team.
Yes.
They're going to – every time you play this Rutgers team, you better be ready for a fist fight. Don't bring a gun to a knife fight when you're playing Rutgers. Or don't bring a knife to a gunfight, I meant to say, when you're playing Rutgers, because they're coming in to win. And I don't care where it's going to be. Indiana fans better be weary when they come into Bloomington. This is a team that is wanting to win, and they're not getting the respect. They're not ranked. They've now beaten Indiana and Purdue, both listed as favorites to win the Big Ten. And they're not ranked. So, but they have had, like I said, Justin's, they've had an inconsistent season as well. So it's going, man, this Big Ten is going to be just a very interesting trip. It is going to be a rough ride for whomever. And Purdue showed some of their flaws. We've talked, a lot about their guards, how well they have been doing. But at the same time, I think that they showed some youth last night, and a team was able to get Zach Edey in foul trouble after we talked about him only having 21 personal fouls and 26 blocks going into that game last night. But they got it. I think, didn't he get a foul like a minute into the game?
Yeah, it was the very first possession Rutgers had. He picked up a foul. And that was a really fun basketball game. Anybody that was just watching it that was great back and forth. Rutgers had a big lead. Purdue took a lead on a Fletcher Lawyer shot late in the game, and then Cam Spencer hit a big time shot there on the road, clutch situation. A lot of people not a big fan of Paul Mulcahy. I love that kid's game. I was talking to John and Jim before we started. He reminds me a lot of Robbie Hummel. Maybe not necessarily in his style of play, but the fact that he can hit a three, the fact that he defends really well, he's a team leader, he can get you into the paint and cause problems. This is a really gritty Rutgers basketball team, and they are a ton of fun to watch, especially on the defensive end. They are damn good defensively. And the other thing is, we talked about this too, Jim. We've given a lot of praise to Purdue's freshman guards for a lot of reasons through the first 13 games. Braden Smith last night did not – there was a lot of bad passing. There was a lot of bad decision-making last night. As you said, when you get into some of these games where you got to make the right plays, I thought Purdue played sloppy. I thought that their basketball IQ last night was pretty low in a lot of areas. So Look, and nobody's going to go through the Big Ten undefeated, but I think that this, to put this back into an IU spin a little bit here, is that I think nobody is unbeatable, and almost everybody in this league is going to have a chance every single night. So I think now, after seeing the way Rutgers, I know the final score doesn't show this, but I thought that they kind of dominated that game from basically the first, I don't know, after the first 4 minutes moving forward. I thought they pretty much dominated that game on the defensive end. So this is going to be a grind. It's going to be an incredibly fun Big Ten season. I don't think you don't have those 3 or 4 teams that are going to, emerge and separate themselves at the top like we've seen these past few years. I think that this is going to be a very deep race and a lot of fun. And now if you're Indiana, smell blood in the water a little bit here and go on the road and give it all you got against Iowa, because there's nobody in this conference that's unbeatable. We've seen that with Illinois. We've seen it now with Purdue. We've seen it with Wisconsin. Very deep league. Anybody can be had any night.
Yeah, I was looking at here's another. We talked about that youth a little bit. That's the exact opposite of Rutgers. While Purdue is starting 2 freshmen and a sophomore in their lineup that has gone away, and you know what, they're going to hit some bumps. You look at Malik Renew for Indiana. He was really trending up through an entire season, and he hit when the competition revved up. His age showed a little bit. So, but Purdue is starting 2 freshmen and a sophomore, but Rutgers starts a junior, a senior, 2 fifth-year seniors. They are experienced, and they haven't won anything, and so they're hungry, and they're tired of hearing Indiana. They're tired of hearing about Purdue. They're tired of hearing about Michigan. They're tired of hearing about Illinois. No one has talked about Rutgers really, and they're just a tough team. They're just gonna, like you said, the inconsistency that was pointed out earlier is something they're going to have to get past. But they're a player. How can they not be considered a player for the Big Ten title now? When you pull off a win on the road like that, and you've already got a win over Indiana, you're sitting in pretty good shape.
There's a chance that Rutgers is the best team in Indiana. They certainly own Indiana. I don't know if anybody has this stat, but haven't they won like 8 or 9 games in a row over Purdue and Indiana? Something absurd, I think.
Well, they've got that almost alone over Indiana. But they've also beat Purdue last year.
Yeah, they did beat Purdue last year. Maybe Purdue got them at home last year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they've won quite a few recently over those 2 teams. And I mean, sometimes when you just have teams number, you just have their number. And Greg Peichel knows how to coach against Indiana, and he knows how to coach against Purdue. That's become quite evident.
Yeah, Rutgers was in Purdue's face. They were in these freshmen's face, but they were picking them up high. They were not letting him come in. They were picking him up beyond the perimeter line and getting in their face and making. That's why you talked about passes. They were in their face, making things difficult. Their shooting was off. They really disrupted everything. But again, that's 2 freshmen and a sophomore versus a junior, a senior, and 2 fifth-year guys. These guys, they're experienced. Not only are they experienced, they're Big Ten experienced. They're big game experience. Steve Peichel is doing a hell of a job. He doesn't. Who talked about Steve Peichel in the Big Ten? Yep. You hear about Mike Woodson. You hear about Juwan Howard and Tom and Izzo and Matt Painter and but Peichel doesn't get a lot of credit.
No, he doesn't. But he just puts his nose in the grindstone and gets to work, man. And the reason that Rutgers is so damn scary every game is because they are so good defensively. They can if they're shooting well, they can win a game 75-65. If they're not shooting well, they can win a game 48-46 if they have to. That's what makes this team a lot of fun. And I agree that their defensive pressure, especially at the guard position, forced Purdue to make a lot of bad decisions last night. You saw it, they could not get into much of a rhythm until late in that game. And then obviously the ability to get Zach Edey into early foul trouble, that was a big factor in that game too. So Rutgers is, if you haven't seen them yet, watch them, because they are a fun basketball team to watch.
Well, we've got lots more to come up, so much so that that segment just flew, man. That's awesome. Looking forward to it on the program today. Mike DeCourcy, of course, from the Sporting News and the Big Ten analyst, as well as Chronic Hoosier joining us as well. Man, it's going to be a great one. Appreciate everybody joining us already. Brought to you by Endeavor Hospitality's Wild Club and BB's Market. Make sure you stop by. I can't wait to stop by myself and pick up a ribeye. They are delish. Chef JD, I hope you're doing fine, man. And we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and we're back with it right after.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether it's
Jim, are you there? I think you're disconnecting.
Okay, I wondered if that was me or him.
I don't know what's going on here.
Will you go out and come back in, if you don't mind?
Me?
Yeah.
I am, but it's not. It's only because of the stupid Wi-Fi.
Oh, it is. Well, there's nothing you can do then. No Chronic.
How about that?
I'll send you a text of the email he sent me.
Jeez.
What did it say?
He has a meeting that he has to be at 9:30 and won't be able to join us.
I keep forgetting everybody's going back to work today.
Honestly,
Well,
it's fine though, because now I'll just clip that conversation you and Dustin just had about Purdue losing, because that was actually a really good conversation.
There we go.
That'll be my backup clip, unless you just get two really good ones with Mike DeCourcy here.
My bad for stealing the spotlight there in the opener, but I wanted to say
No, it's perfect.
You didn't do anything wrong there. You didn't do anything
bothers-
wrong there.
it-
And by the way,
that-
Dustin, if
rude.
you want to send me a photo, a new photo you want me to use for the thumbnails.
I'll just use a photo of my bald head, because when you have hair, you don't realize how bad it gets.
No, that'll be real fitting the day after I post one with the old thumbnail.
See if I can get a good one here for you. I might just use
send
the
me
one
one
that's
of your dogs.
There we go. There we go. Biscuit joined the show today.
Good morning,
Mike.
Mr. DeCourcy.
Morning, everybody.
hey, Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Jim. How are you?
Good. You hanging on pins and needles for your Steelers?
I'm hopeful. Hopeful.
That was an awful moment last night.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see it live. I had taped the Purdue and West Virginia games and was watching those on DVR and was going to turn the football on. After I got through with those, I turned the game on, and it said it was postponed. I had no idea what had happened.
What did the network do?
They kept it there for an unnecessarily long period of time, but
It was about an hour and a half.
I don't know. I don't know what they're supposed to do. Everybody that was on that broadcast did a phenomenal job of handling that
Well,
situation.
the one thing you can expect is to never expect an NFL game of all
Here we go,
games
guys.
to be
Restaurant is part
postponed.
of Endeavor
Probably.
Hospitality's Wild Club.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Southern Stone Restaurant, part of the Wild Club Endeavor Hospitality Group. Make sure you stop by Southern Stone each Monday night, 7:05. You can catch Mike Woodson, head coach of Indiana basketball, along with Don Fisher for Inside Indiana Basketball. Today, we've got the great Mike DeCourcy with us, as always. Michael, how are you, sir? Happy New Year. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everything all in one. I don't think we've seen you since then, so I hope you and your family had a great holiday season.
We did, yes. It was very nice. obviously very cold on Christmas Eve, the day before that. Very, very cold, but the weather conditions didn't really affect the roads too much, so we were able to get through all that, and nothing back here happened to my home. We were worried about the pipes and all that, but nothing too bad. So it was very nice, and got to get a little bit of time off and spend it with my wife. So it was a good couple of weeks.
Awesome. Go ahead, Dustin.
I was going to jump right into last night, a Big Ten upset last night with Rutgers taking down Purdue on the road. And Mike, I was just going to jump in, and not to put you on the spot here, but who is the most entertaining Big Ten basketball player to watch, and why is it Paul Mulcahy?
I think it's the headband, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, he's been a wonderful player for them. He was a big recruit. They in trying to get their program established, a player of his consequence in New Jersey, they very much needed and wanted to get him, and he's proven to be a very valuable player on their various NCAA tournament teams. Remember, this is a program that, as recently as 2015, I think they won one Big Ten game the entire year. And now they're in the process. Obviously nothing's established, but they're driving toward a third consecutive NCAA tournament appearance. And they hadn't had back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances since the 70s. So it's really cool to see what Steve Peichel has done there. He's done an amazing job. He's built a terrific culture of toughness. The thing that I think has been surprising to an extent with this team, you knew that they had three legit guys. That they had in Mulcahy and McConnell, and of course Amore. They had three legit guys that were going to be really good. And so what was going to help complement that? That was the question. And their freshmen have done a really nice job. I'm not sure that was anticipated, based on the Big Ten sources I have. They were not anticipated to be huge contributors, but they're getting terrific contributions. Cam Spencer makes the winning bucket last year, and of course he was a transfer, not a high school kid. But Loyola Maryland, not exactly UCLA or whatever, and so he made a great contribution with that. And Derek Simpson was a very good player last night. Derek Simpson was the number 245 player in the country coming out of high school. Antoine Woolfolk, who played last night and did some things, 292. And they're getting production out of those players. They're getting contribution out of those players. And I think that speaks to, again, I think the ability of Steve Peichel and his staff to integrate players into what has been an effective culture, a winning culture, and to get those guys to believe that they belong out there as well.
Yeah, and they fight. They have grit, and every game. I was saying earlier, I said, don't bring a knife to a gunfight with Rutgers, because they're going to give it to you every night, and it doesn't matter if it's at their place or yours. And that kind of makes. I had a thought earlier this morning, but before we even were on, that Mike Woodson keeps talking about Indiana playing harder and being with more effort, and the rebounding that they have been not getting is because of effort and this and that. And I'm like, are players, these other guys, are they just becoming softer because these NIL, where they're just seem like they're taken care of a lot? You look at these Rutgers guys, I don't think that they're getting just inundated with these big NIL offers. And they start a junior, a senior, to fifth-year guys. And I'm wondering if you're going to see more of that, where you have a situation where you got Steve Peichel, who's taking guys and getting production from people that others, that they were overlooked by other guys, and they all take it with a chip on their shoulder and play that way.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily getting softer, but I think that it's. I think most players play hard most of the time, but the ones who play the hardest, there's a difference between playing hard and playing your hardest. And so in games like this, and there are a lot of things that go into this now. I mean, the travel might have an impact on it. The classwork, now, of course, that's not the case at the moment, but because of the semester break. But classwork sometimes, girlfriend issues, stuff like that, personal stuff back at home. I mean, there's so many things that can go into that, just as it was when we were all in college. It could, stuff that's away from the sport could impact how we might feel on a particular day, or away from what we might be, we might be in class thinking about, maybe you're thinking about another class while you're sitting in class and you're missing the class that you're having, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that impacts a young person at that point. And I think the effective coaches are the ones who get guys to filter all that stuff out and concentrate on the task at hand. And one of the things that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I try to talk about this as much as possible, is that for a lot of college basketball players, they're looking for nights off. And what I mean by that is they're looking at the schedule and saying, okay, that team can't play. They're going to come in our gym. They're going to be scared to death of our crowd. The refs are going to give us all the calls, and we're going to win if we just play, a C level or a B level effort. I'm telling you, that happens all the time. And what's happening now in particular leagues, the Big 12 especially, I mean, they got no nights off. Everyone in that league could make the NCAA tournament. Now, they can't all make it, but every single team out of their 10 could make it today as we as we get underway in conference play. And the Big 10 is not far from that. It has a few that would take a near miracle, probably even the miracle of winning 4 or 5 in a row in the conference tournament. There's a few of those, but not many out of 14 are in that position. Most are, again, in the position of either should make it or could make it. And so it's hard for college basketball players to always be sharp. And I think we saw that with the Michigan game against Central Michigan. They thought that would be an easy one, and it didn't happen to be. And they took an L. I think that happened with Iowa in their game. I think it was Eastern Illinois that took them. I don't think there's much doubt that's what happened there. You think you have it, and all of a sudden, other team starts dropping shots, and then you're in trouble. And so I don't think that's what happened with Rutgers and Purdue last night. I think Rutgers just matches up really well. They have the one play. Like if you were going to pick anybody in college basketball and say, okay, here's Zach Edey, how do you deal with him? If you were to pick one player in college basketball, Cliff Amore would be the first draft choice to try to solve that problem. 100%. He is 6'11". He is the most dynamic big man in college basketball. He is long. He is physically powerful. He is defensively oriented. He was the perfect player to start to solve that problem. And as it turned out, they got Zach into foul trouble in the first half, so his minutes were limited. So they struggle and they get down 10, and then they have to come back. And at that, I mean, they did do a great job of coming back, and then they made a defensive error on the last Rutgers possession. You don't see many defensive errors from Purdue, but Ethan Morton got caught like worrying about helping out on a drive instead of remembering. He's got a 7'4" centered back there. Guard your guy. He gets caught worrying about whether or not the ball's going to turn the corner, and he forgets about Spencer, and the kid's wide open when the kick out comes. It was a defensive error. You don't see a lot of those from Purdue, but you saw one there, and that's what happened. I thought Purdue did a really nice job fighting back in that game, and Matt Painter said he was disappointed with the toughness level that his team showed. He thought Rutgers was tougher in that game, but let's be honest. Rutgers is built to be tougher than Purdue is at this point. I mean, Purdue's starting 2 freshmen.
And a sophomore.
Yeah, so Rutgers is built to be tougher. Purdue's built to be better. And they, in that one, those 2 circumstances, one, Zach hitting 2 fouls, that hurt them immeasurably. You saw the difference in Zach's first half, second half offensive production. He barely produced. I think he had 4 points in the first half and all the rest. And I think at one point he was close to double digits in the second half. And then that one defensive error. They did everything else right to come back in the second half. But when those things happen, a good team is going to punish you. And there is no doubt that Rutgers basketball is a good team now. They've got to do now is they've got to continue to. Rutgers has to continue to build on this. Last year they had a meager non-conference. No, that's not fair. They had an awful non-conference last year, and so they had to have a great Big Ten just to squeeze into a first 4 game. And they didn't play great in non-conference this year either. I mean, they lost to Seton Hall, and that's a great rivalry, but that was at home. So, I mean, that's a game they shouldn't drop. So now they kind of have to make up for that again a little bit. And last night was a great start in that direction, to win a game that you're not supposed to. If you lose a game you're not supposed to, you have to win a game you're not supposed to. And Rutgers countered one with about as big a win as you can get in this league.
Well, and we've seen a lot of the balance now in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any one or even couple teams that are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. I just think it's really that deep. I think you could go 9 or 10 in this league, maybe even further down. But that brings up my question. There are teams that are built to be better there, and then there's a Rutgers team that's built to be very tough, and they've got a lot of veteran leadership on that team. In your mind, Mike, can Rutgers be near the top of the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Offense is not easy for them.
Right.
They have to work really hard to score, and so that's one of the obstacles for them to be successful in league play. When it's always a chore to score, it's hard to win a lot, especially on the road. They're 111 in offensive efficiency right now at Ken Pom. Some of that's probably still preseason rating, but I think if you watched them last night, you can see that scoring is still a chore, and some of that is offensive discipline. I was disappointed in them in the second half that they took tough shots. You're ahead. You shouldn't take any tough shots. When you go into the second half with a 10-point lead against a great team on the road, you should never take a bad shot unless you just run you exhaust every option on a possession in certain circumstances and nothing's clicking and you take a late clock tough shot. But they took early tough shots in that game. And with guys like Mulcahy and McConnell on their team, those guys have had the basketball in their hands a lot. Mulcahy's is a true point. And so I just don't think they should take as many tough shots as they do. And that helped contribute to Purdue's ability to come back in that game. If they want to contend for the title, their offense has to become not only more proficient and efficient, but it also has to become more intelligent.
Indiana now taking on an Iowa team that you mentioned earlier. That they're 0-3 in the Big Ten now, which is a little surprising, obviously, but they come back home to play Indiana being off for this long time. Weird scheduling because Iowa will play. I think this will be their third game in just over a week or whatever the period is. Indiana has not played in since last year. And it's a late game at Iowa on the road. I think that makes it even any easier for Indiana. You've got two teams that are both hungry and needing this win, but Iowa cannot go 0-4, and they can't do it at home. And that's going to be a tough game for Indiana to come out of there with a win.
It will. You've got what. There's a couple things that are in IU's favor. One, it was clear as they played through December first without Jalen Hood-Schifino and then subsequently without Xavier Johnson, that it was hard for them to find a formula when they had built everything around having the multiple point guards and attacking from both angles and really putting teams off balance, being able to do so many different things offensively. And also Xavier is a terrific on-ball defender when he puts his full concentration into it, which he had done for most of this year. So you needed some time to build something else. They need to be a different team than they intended to be because they don't know when. I mean, we don't know, and the suspicion is that Xavier will not be back for a while. So they need to be a different team than they'd imagined themselves to be. So that layoff did give them time to try to reconfigure what they are. And so I think there's an advantage there. If they were still out there unless they, other than playing like a bye game in the middle of all that, that would give them a chance to roll it out and see how it looks in practice. I think it was good for them to have that time off. I do think that they, there could be a little bit of rust, but I think you look at a team like Iowa, and they are somewhat built to be a team that IU matches up well with, because they don't have the big post defenders to really bother Trace. And so you should be able to run some of your stuff through him that you like to run, that you were struggling to do against Armando Bacot and some others that you played. Excuse me. So I think it's a difficult assignment given the circumstance, because Iowa will be desperate, but I also think it's an opportunity.
Well, and you talk about the change Indiana forced, and Tamar Bates entering the starting lineup for Indiana. That change, it's going to be a different look that teams are going to have to see. It's going to be a different offense that teams are going to have to face, a slightly different style, because Tamar brings something a little different, and he brings something different to the offense. Hopefully something that loosens his offense up, because they have gotten stagnated, and teams have really kind of formulated a formula for how to defend Indiana while they had been going through this. But Tamar is one of those guys that gives you helps open the spacing back up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, if he makes shots, which, obviously his job, and it is a team now that has that takes the floor with multiple 3-point marksmen. That's their first job. That's their first skill. Obviously, Xavier is a quality 3-point shooter, but it's not his first. It's not even probably. It's probably third on his list of options when he's playing offense. His first is to get the offense started, and the second is to try to attack the lane. So this gives them, what a lot of teams have now, which is two guys out there with him and Miller Kopp that can space the floor, and with someone like Jalen who can attack the lane and see people. It gives them maybe again, Tamar has to make shots, and Miller has to keep doing it as he has for this entire season. But if that presents itself as a weapon, it does make IU, a dangerous offensive team, because obviously when you can space the floor, and that means you can get the ball inside to Trace and have more one-on-one opportunities. And if teams choose to double, they're leaving a shooter more often than not. And Trace is terrific. I mean, he is elite at passing out of the post. The problem that he's had in passing out of the post is that too often the ball hasn't been going to a shooter, so it doesn't really help that much.
Well, and I think too, Mike, the big thing that I wanted to see from Indiana with Tamar Bates is, I think through the first 13, 14 games, we can acknowledge that Indiana has not been a fast starting team. It takes them a little while to find their footing. And I think Tamar Bates is a guy who can fill it up quickly. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to get 8 points in the first 4 minutes of a basketball game and suddenly Indiana's issues are going to be fixed. But I think that there's some optimism now that Mike Woodson was willing to tweak that lineup. And if Indiana can get off to better starts in some of these games and not have to dig themselves out of these holes, then I think that is a positive sign, because we've talked a lot on this show, and some people have said, if Tamar Bates is playing 30 minutes, what does it matter if he starts or he doesn't? But those first 4 to 6 minutes of a game, when you're trying to set the tempo, makes a big difference. And so to me, that's what I'm looking for. I know what he brings to the floor, but to me, I think his impact in those first 4 minutes can be so monumental for Indiana that it's going to be interesting, because as we've talked about, Indiana's had a couple weeks off here. They're going to probably have some rust, but I'm looking to see what he can do offensively and see if this team can get off to some better starts in some of these games.
One of the things that when people say it doesn't matter who starts, I point out that nearly all college basketball coaches in nearly every situation will start the same players at the start of the first half and the start of the second half.
Yeah.
And then they'll play them for roughly 5 minutes at least. So that's 10 minutes. How long is a game? 40 minutes. So that's a fourth of the game. It doesn't matter who's out there? Come on. That's a quarter of the game. Of course it matters. They have to be able to play together. They have to be able to click. They have to be able to be functional at both ends of the floor. It's essential that you have the right starting lineup. And now that doesn't necessarily have to be your 5 best guys or whatever you mean, but those 5 guys, when you put them on the floor, have to be good together, or you're throwing away a quarter of the game. So yes, it definitely matters whether someone starts or whether they don't. Now, it doesn't mean that Tamar Bates should have been starting all along, or
right.
Because again, some of the difficulty in starting slowly is again traced to the absence of Jalen Hood-Schifino in the Rutgers game and some others, and now Xavier. So some of it is that they haven't been able to build that on-floor chemistry because they haven't had all their players. They spent from end of September all the way to second week in November, first week in November. They're spending all that time building a chemistry, building a formula. This is how we're going to win. And then all of a sudden, a month into the season, one of them's not playing. And it's like, okay, well, now we're a completely different team. It's like, you take a quarterback away from a football team and, or the center away from the football team, or a middle linebacker away from defense, and everything changes. So I have some sympathy for Indiana because I don't think there's a team in the top 25 that's had 2 starters go down for multiple games.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another that has, and they have been able to at least hold their ranking. And there's what they accomplished is already on the board relative to things like the bracket I'm working on for Fox today. That doesn't go away, but with you missing a starter now for what appears to be an extended period of time, you have to become a different team than you intended to be, and you have to be successful as that team.
Absolutely. We've got to take a break. The great Mike DeCourcy is with us, and we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our great friends at Endeavor Hospitality and GoTeam. Make sure you can pick up GoTeam at BB's Market, or just go online at goteam.com. Back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's the deal.
Mike, did they the USMNT didn't let Greg Berhalter go, did they?
No, but his contract has expired.
I kept seeing, because I was confused seeing people talk about those kinds of things. I didn't know what the deal was with that.
Yeah, I'm surprised they let it expire without some sort of announcement or whatever. But or pursuing an extension. I don't know what Greg's feelings are at this point. I imagine being that guy is not easy because the fan base is extreme.
And it seems like it's great that they're passionate, but it seems like it's gotten to the point to where it doesn't matter what they do.
Yeah.
They always want to move on to the next manager. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Well, I think and this is not universal, but it's very loud among the people who it affects. There's a segment of the fan base that will never be happy with an American coach because they believe that Americans don't know the game, and which is ironic, obviously, because they're all Americans, but they just don't believe that Americans know the game at all, and are all completely incompetent. And so, it's frustrating. There's a lot of talk online for Roberto Martinez, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. He just went to the World Cup with Kevin De Bruyne on his team and bowed out of the group stage without winning a game, I think. And we want that guy? Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne is like one of the 5 best players in the world. And and I get all when I point that out to people, it's like, well, yeah, but they were old. Oh, okay. All right. So Kevin De Bruyne is like 26 years old or 27, but it's okay to lose with him because he's coached in Europe, and that's all that matters.
Oh, Jim left us. Whoops.
He didn't leave us. He just walked away for a second.
He's still
30 seconds.
here.
He said, "Why are we talking about Greg Berhalter and the U.S. men's
No,
national
not
team?"
at all, because it actually reminded me of something else that I forgot to bring up. Two people that were lost in between our conversations, Pele and Franco Harris.
Oh yeah.
Mike wrote about
All right, here
both
we
of
go.
those, but yeah, I didn't think about both of those being gone during that time.
And mouthwater. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Tuesday, January 3rd. Is that right, or 2nd? I can't even remember now.
The 3rd. Because if it was the
Perfect.
2nd, I'd be off today.
Oh, that would be good. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our good friends at Remax Realty, friendly market for a home in the Indianapolis area. You need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. A couple of people were lost from the sports world here recently that Mike is very attuned to and have written a lot about. Of course, Franco Harris, because of his ties to the Steelers, and Pele. First of all, I knew of Pele when I was a kid, and I didn't know jack squat about soccer. I didn't know anything other than it was a round ball that they ran around on the field and kicked into a net. But I knew who Pele was. I mean, he was like Michael Jackson in that type of realm. He was that big, and he just transcended everything. It seemed like.
It's absolutely the best way to describe him, Jim. I grew up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and soccer was almost non-existent in the United States. The U.S. did not qualify for the World Cup from 1930 until 1950 until 1990, 40-year gap. Which I wasn't born in 1950, but they still weren't making it by the time I was. And but I grew up as a absolutely sports obsessed kid, and that's how I got to be the sports obsessed 60-year-old that I am now. And soccer just didn't even get on the radar. It wasn't here. And then the NISL started, and so you were aware that it was out there, but unless there was a team in your town, it was never on television. And then I think about 6 or 7 years, it was 75 he came in. I think the NASL started in 68, if I remember correctly. So 7 years or so into that, the owner of the New York team says, "Get me Pele, spend whatever you have to." And they gave him a contract that was $1 million a year for 3 years, basically something like that. And that was a lot more then than it is now. It was very rare to be making that much money. And so he comes, and like you said, everybody knew who he was. You didn't know soccer, but you knew Pele. As I pointed out in the article that I wrote after he passed, there was an American Express commercial, and this was when their tagline was "Don't leave home without it." That was their tagline, and so they did a whole commercial with Pele in Portuguese, subtitled, and as I said in the article, I said Francois Truffaut and Federico Fellini couldn't get Americans to read subtitles, but Pele could. And so he got it. He really, in a lot of ways, like his entry into the U.S. market did not cause the soccer boom that happened, but it planted the seed. If you talk to John Harkes, who was a midfielder on the 90 and 94 teams for the World Cup, or Tony Miola, or Tab Ramos, they all grew up in northern New Jersey, and they all went to Cosmos games, and a couple of them were ball boys. And they saw Pele, and that's what said, "This is what I want to be as an athlete." I mean, they were all very good athletes and could have played high school football or whatever. And instead they said, this is the sport I want to play. I want to play this sport. And they became the foundation of the soccer boom in the U.S. And they were part of the team that got the U.S. qualified in 1990. So even though Pele, the NASL failed and soccer went away again, and even though all that happened, he still planted that seed of soccer interest. And so I think that's a big part of why he mattered here. But like you said, I mean, I remember when it came out in 80 or 81, there's a movie called Victory. It's in other parts of the world, I think it was known as Escape to Victory, but here in the U.S. it was released as a movie called Victory. And it starred Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine. And it was about, and it's a good movie if you ever get a chance to see it. It was about a group of prisoners who were engaged in a soccer game against a group of prisoners of war who were engaged in a soccer game against their German guards. And this actually happened in real life, and the true story is much sadder than the movie. But in the movie, they play this game, and they I don't know exactly. And Pele was one of the prisoners. I'm not sure. I can't remember how they worked it out that there was a Brazilian in it. Because I don't know much about Brazil's engagement in World War II. I don't remember. I don't know that history very well. So maybe they had a lot. I don't know. But there were English. Sir Bobby Moore, who was on England's 1966 World Cup, was in it, and there were some other great soccer players who were in it. And let's be honest, Sir Bobby Moore was one of the greatest players of all time. I have no idea who he was. I didn't know then who he was, and I didn't know until I looked it up that he had been in the movie because he didn't register. But Pele, like you said, everybody knew who he was. And there's a great scene in the movie where Michael Caine is the captain of the team, and he's diagramming plays on a chalkboard that they can run, that different sets that they can run to try to get shots. And Pele just grabs the piece of chalk and he goes, I go here, 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 score. Easy. It's a great thing. You can find it on YouTube. And that's just, and like, for those of us who knew about Pele, it was like, yeah, that makes sense because he's Pele.
Yeah, well, I guess he had to be the first international superstar, sports superstar.
Well, I think team
known
sport,
throughout the U.S. and the world, I guess.
Because boxing guys like Joe Louis transcended borders, or Sugar Ray Robinson, or especially when he came along, Muhammad Ali, and Ali was around the same time athletically as Pele. So I think from that standpoint you might have had some of that, but from a team sports standpoint, I mean, at that point, Bill Russell didn't cross borders. I mean, he went to the Olympics and won a gold medal, but or Wilt Chamberlain or Babe Ruth. I mean, they didn't cross many borders because baseball wasn't that big. But soccer was worldwide. And so the world knew Pele from the World Cup and all that. And again, it was harder for him to get traction here, but eventually he conquered the U.S. as well.
College football off and running. The Big Ten had two entrants in the college football championship. Of course, both of those coming up with losses. Great games, unfortunately. The Big Ten losing Michigan to TCU, obviously, and Ohio State to Georgia. The bigger question right now, where's Jim Harbaugh going to be next year?
I don't know. This happens every year. But what he said last spring or last winter was that was his decision for good. That was it. That's what he said, more or less, if I remember correctly. He said, the opportunity was there, thought about it. He said, nope, I'm staying here. And so, people can be interested, and obviously there's a reason for that. I mean, he's a very capable football coach, but I remember, the various coaches I've seen that have done that, usually when they make a decision for life, I think Izzo was in that circumstance multiple times. And finally, I think the last one was the Cleveland Cavaliers, when he was offered that opportunity. And it was like, I'm either doing this now or I'm never thinking about it again. And I was pretty sure that's what Harbaugh said last year. So we'll see whether or not I may be wrong about that. I don't think I am, but I may be. But we'll see what he decides. Obviously, it has a huge impact on the future of Michigan football if he does go in that direction. But I think at this point I would be surprised.
Well, I mean, you're spot on. He did say that last year. Basically, he wanted to, if an organization had a chance to win a Super Bowl, he wanted to give it some serious consideration, because that's obviously the thing you want to do when you're a football coach, is get to the pinnacle of the sport. So what's interesting to me is when he handled that situation last year, he was very upfront with recruits, with his players, and kind of, laying it all out. Like, this is what I'm doing. Not saying I'm going, not saying I'm not. This is just what's going to happen. And I feel like, love him or hate him, Jim Harbaugh has been a pretty authentic, pretty honest guy. And so for that reason, it's hard for me to believe he's going to leave Michigan, especially now that he's got them up and running, and they are now the team to beat in the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting. We'll see. There's intriguing jobs with the Colts, with the Broncos. I'm sure there's going to be some others that pop open. But this will be probably the first time I'd be surprised if Jim Harbaugh left Michigan for the NFL.
Yeah, interesting you say that that's an intriguing option, because Bob Kravitz of The Athletic did not look at the Colts job as an intriguing option. He looked at it as
the worst.
True.
Yes, he said it's a really bad job. Now, I don't think that this season has been handled well at all by the tip-top management. I don't think you handle a season like that. I don't think you fire an offensive coordinator, then fire a head coach, then bring in a head coach who's never coached. I don't think any of that was productive. And the other thing I will say is, I don't understand why they have played, the quarterback musical chairs over the last several years. I got, why they got put in that situation. The Andrew Luck retirement, was pretty quick and sudden and hard to cope with. And then I understood the Phillip Rivers, because Phillip still had some good football in him and probably could have played another good year if he'd chosen to.
Yeah.
So I got that as well. But I didn't understand why, once Phillip decided 1 year was it and he was going to go coach high school football, why you didn't at that point say, okay, we got to get serious about this. So, where are we going? And the Carson Wentz maneuver, I don't know that was necessarily a really forward-thinking move. I think it was too short-term a solution, and then, of course, it blew up on them for a lot of different reasons. But I thought at that point they should have started planning for the future. The team wasn't so built for now that they were like a Super Bowl contender and all they needed was this. I mean, they were a team that could win in the league and could make a playoff run, but it wasn't like they had everything else in place and they were so dominant. And gosh, if they only had a quarterback.
The Big Ten had their best chance to win a national championship this year than they have in a long, long time, obviously, with two entrants into the college football playoff championship game. The closer game was actually Ohio State and Georgia, who I thought would be a more difficult game. Michigan getting upset, a slight upset by TCU, and TCU now has nothing to lose going in to play for a national championship. And the Big Ten still cannot get over that hump. Dustin, did you say yesterday it was 16 out of 17 years?
16 out of 17, I believe, that the SEC champion or an SEC representative has played in the championship game in college football, dating back to the BCS era. So that's insane. And I just want to say that everybody that doesn't love a 12-team playoff, doesn't like that idea. Did you watch the TCU Michigan game? Did you watch Tulane beat USC? Have you watched some of these other bowl games that have been phenomenal this season? And I don't understand why still people think that you label it as a playoff and put 12 teams in it, that stuff's not going to happen. Upsets happen throughout the course of a college football season. That's not to say that a team like LSU that was in 2019 that was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. That's not to say they're not going to win a championship, but it creates so much more fun. And nobody gave TCU a shot. Nobody. And they went out and they dominated for most of that game. Now I'm thrilled for a 12-team playoff, and I can't wait because we're going to get so many of those kind of games, I think.
Dustin, and not only that, I mean, I think even fewer people gave Ohio State a shot.
Yes.
Because of Georgia's frequent dominance during the year. And Ohio State outplayed Georgia and made, they had a couple things go wrong. The timeout that stopped their fake punt, and just choosing not to go forward with a different version of a fake punt at that point. I don't think that was a bad decision, but one of the things that teams sometimes won't acknowledge is, look, if we punt this ball, what's the difference? They're going to score in 4 plays anyway. I mean, at a certain point, you have to say to yourself, we understand, what might happen. So what can happen if we choose to go a different way? And then I was surprised that when they had the great scramble from C.J. Stroud down to the 30, that all of a sudden the approach was like, well, we've got Justin Tucker here to kick the winning field goal, so we're okay at the 30. Wait, really? Like, how do you go out on down 1 and run the ball? I mean, I understand that at that point there's some concern about taking a sack that takes you further away, but then do a quick drop or something like that, or roll him out. But instead, they tried to kick a 50-yard field goal, and I think that was a lot to put on the young man.
What was interesting to me about that, Mike, was after the game, Ryan Day was asked about that, and he said we would run the same play again. And C.J. Stroud said it was a good call, it was a great call, and those are the types of answers where I'm like, okay, I'm not an X's and O's guy, don't understand it, I'm not going to pretend to. But did you have the right call in place? Did you see something and a guy just missed an assignment? Was it an execution flaw and you had the play that you wanted? That's where I got curious. I'd have to go back and watch and see how that play developed, because I thought the same thing you did. At first, I'm like, what is Ohio State doing? They've moved the ball on Georgia's defense the entire game. Why not stay aggressive? And I understand you want to be cautiously aggressive, may be the best way to do it. But I haven't gone back and watched, but I want to go back and watch that play, because it seemed like they were steadfast in their decision to run the football on that specific play. So I wonder if there was a missed assignment, or if the execution was off and they still liked what they saw and it just didn't pan out, because sometimes that might be the case too.
Well, the other team also had the best defensive line in college football. True. So you're not going to block them every time. And so you'd gotten the ball down there being aggressive, and also by being, risk-taking with your quarterback, by having him exploit over rushing or just the fact that he got lucky on the way a pocket broke or whatever, but he got down there with his legs, and so put him on the move, have him roll out to the right and see if he can get something done. And again, if you do that, you're not going to get sacked for a long loss, and also if you throw an incomplete pass, you've got the you're still in the same position as if you get stuffed on the run, except the clock stops. So, I didn't think they managed the clock great either. I think there were 30 seconds they could have had if they called timeout while Georgia had the ball, instead of holding on to it to use it when they got it back. I think that coaches often do that and forget that there are so many different ways. Or ignore or dismiss this. I shouldn't say forget it, but ignore, forget, dismiss. But there are so many ways that you can stop the clock as the offense. You can go out of bounds. You can incomplete pass. You can spike it if you need to stop it. So there are lots of different. But when you're on defense, the only thing you can do is call timeout. Right. I mean, you can't fake an injury, because that's going to cost you 10 seconds at that point. The runoff or whatever. So you have one thing that you can do, and instead they decided to hold on to the timeout, and they had a lot less time when they got down to the 30 than they might have.
I mentioned Jim Harbaugh earlier, and you talked about the missteps that the Colts have made, and I agree. But do they go after Jim Harbaugh now? I mean, is that not a name that's kind of at the top of Jim Irsay's list? He's on the Ring of Honor and played there and was a guy that led them. I would think that Jim Irsay has to go after him until he says no.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a logic to making the call, but if Jim is true to what he said a year ago, then it would be a quick process. No, I'm not interested in the NFL. I'm good where I am. Okay, then you move on. I don't think there's any harm in that as an NFL coach. I think sometimes colleges get caught up in that, and there is harm because you diminish your job. But the NFL is the NFL. There's 32 of them. that people are going to want the job. So I think it wouldn't hurt them at all to do that. But I think you obviously have to have a plan for what you want your next coach to be. And I think that they need to start to, I really liked Frank Reich, and I thought he did a good job here. And I don't think the way it has gone above his head, it had gone above his head for the previous 18 months, was that successful.
I agree with you. And you talk about you've got to have a plan. They haven't seemed to have a plan for anything they've done up until this point. With firing the OC, firing the coach, hiring a coach that had no business being there. They just don't seem like the quarterback situation. The planning has not seemed like something they've done very well at, if they have done it at all.
Yeah, look, there's planning. I mean, this is a serious NFL organization. They are planning, but I think I'm not sure what exactly happened with Frank, whether or not there was blame to him for why Wentz didn't work out, and that may have been why they soured on him. He vouched for him, perhaps, because they had been together in Philadelphia, and then it was a complete disaster, so that might have soured them on him. But I think that the successful teams in the NFL, the ones that are successful for a long period of time, have cultures in their locker room that are winning cultures. Baltimore being an example of that. San Francisco, I think, has that now. I think KC certainly has that with Andy Reid. I think those are the teams you want to emulate them. And what the Colts have done over the last 4 months, I mean, they've not done that. They've gone the exact opposite. They've emulated the Jets. And sorry, Brock, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason why the Jets are where they are. When you do things like that, that's where you end up. And
Kevin Brockway'd love to hear that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, sorry, K bro. I mean, but it's true. I mean, that they, again, you look at the Jets season. They are cruising along. They are winning games, and then their quarterback says something dumb and has a couple of bad games, and everybody goes the exact opposite direction, and like he gets benched and all this, and they've not been the same since. That's how the losing organizations operate.
Buddy, what's up next for you, Mike?
Well, I think we'll be delving into the Damar Hamlin situation, and very hopeful that we'll be writing positive stories about his recovery soon, as well as the college football playoff coming up, and some of the things that Dustin said earlier about the direction the playoff will go. TCU's presence in the college football playoff championship game. The only problem with that is that it makes you want the real playoff now, or next time we do. Do we have to do this again? This 4-team stuff one more time? Do we really have to wait another year after this?
Right.
This is the confirmation that we should have had the real playoff all along, and we've kicked it down the road, and now we know we need it, and it's going to be great. And we got to wait one more year after this. We'll have a cool championship game on Monday night. But don't you wish that we didn't have to wait till 24? I mean,
yes.
Oh, I wish we never had to wait. But
yes.
What do fans know? Well, we don't know anything. But we cannot thank you enough, buddy. Look forward to seeing you again next week. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, guys.
Actually, now that it's warmer. It's warmer up there now, huh?
Take care.
Mike DeCourcy joining us from the Sporting News and as a Big Ten analyst. Appreciate him joining us each and every week. Brought to you by Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. If you're in the Louisville, Southern Indiana, Floyd, Clark, Harrison, Scott County areas, they've served those communities for over 3 decades. And there's no one that can get you in the home better, quicker, and less expensive than anyone. Reach out to Barbara at barbarapop.com or our man Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. We're back with more after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore.
Here, I'll be right back.
Everybody left us, guys. Well, we can address this comment if you want some.
Yeah, I would say no to that.
Well, I mean, I don't mind addressing it because it's not. There's no way that you can put any. You can't. That's just a complete total guess. Yeah, I mean,
there was an actual
for that to happen one time out of how many thousands of plays have already occurred.
There was an explanation from somebody as to what might have happened. Like it was a cardiologist, or I don't know the correct title, but it was an explanation as to how that sort of injury can happen, and it had to do with the way the hit occurred, I believe. I
remember kids playing baseball that got hit by a baseball and it caused cardiac arrest. So there's just a myriad. He could have had a problem that no one knew about. There's way too many, and that would be the last thing that was on the list. Again, because how many thousands of plays have there been?
Right.
And without one instance. So no, that's an absolutely non-starter.
The thing is it's okay to acknowledge that we are not doctors and we do not know. And I don't know why people need to jump to these conclusions about this stuff. It's not. It goes back to what I said in the beginning. Anyway, I'm not going to go off on that tangent again.
It's because everyone has to politicize everything that happens.
Correct.
Nothing can just happen. Everything has to have a political backdrop.
John nailed it.
To avoid decision fatigue, you pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of
let John and
this segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Tuesday, January 3rd, brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar, of course. An incredible wine selection with a sommelier on staff to give you a hand on picking that right wine out for the dinner, for the party, for the wife, whatever you need. And that's a great place to eat, located right next door to Southern Stone, by the way. So lots of options there, and all a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wow Club. Make sure you join the Wow Club. Start earning Wow rewards today. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this January the 3rd, 2023. That sounds like we should be doing this from a spaceship.
It does, doesn't it?
23. I mean, 2023. I just could not have considered that in my life of back even in the 90s of thinking 2023. It's like, oh my God, that's so far away.
And think of all the technology we can play. We can play music through our phones. We can FaceTime.
The phone's not even a phone anymore.
It's a computer.
Yeah, it's not even a phone. I use it as a phone. That's the least thing I use it for, is a phone.
That is 100% true. Correct. Yep. I'm with you.
I guarantee you, it is the least that I use it for is as a phone. It's everything else. It's the contacts. It's a computer. It's just all these different things. And I can call somebody on this thing if I want.
Right.
So,
and then
it's crazy.
FaceTime people from around the world. You can listen to music wherever you are. It's crazy. So if you think about like 2023 and all the things that we have now that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago, that alone is, and you put it all in perspective, it is kind of like we're living in the Jetsons. We just don't have the spaceships.
The Jetsons. Man, were they not ahead of their time?
They were. This is the times they were talking about.
The Jetsons and Star Trek. I mean, things that we have today that are the flip phone. Remember their what do you call them? What do they call those?
I don't know what they used to call them.
But anyway, that's a flip phone.
Yep. Flip phone, the old
now,
razor.
The one thing the thing that they haven't done is be able to transport do the transport thing now.
You know what
that would be kind of cool.
That would be sweet. Do you know what I miss about the flip phone though? Going back to
flying cars, except some flying cars, man.
There you go.
That would be great.
I mean, that's coming.
Well, the electric the cars that basically drive themselves on the road. Yeah, I'm not saying flying cars are coming anytime soon. There are definitely will be equipped, probably small craft, I would imagine, but that's going to be for the rich and famous.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, I don't know about all that, but let's see. So we're out of bowl games.
We are almost out of bowl games.
We've got the national championship coming up, but that's it. That is the last one. Usually there's a few scragglers that come in.
Yeah,
they like to stretch out, but
there's been times when you remember a few years ago, Indiana played in the Gator Bowl, and I think that was a day after. I think that was like January 2nd after all the games on January 1st. So they got like even though it wasn't a major high profile bowl game, Indiana got they got the TV and all the crowd to themselves basically, and what a momentum swing that would have been had they won that game against Tennessee. But yep, now we're just down to the national championship game next Monday. So college football season's almost over.
I hope that Bob Kravitz is able to join us tomorrow. He's been without a voice for quite a while, so hasn't been able to come on, but he's still writing, obviously. And as Mike alluded to earlier, wrote a piece recently about the coach job is not one that's enviable, not one that's very desirable. And that's hard to say about an NFL head coaching position, but I'm definitely going to look forward to talking to him if we get to. If not, I'll talk to him regardless by texting or whatever to get his thoughts on, do they go after Jim Harbaugh? I mean, how do they not go after Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, I think they've got to. And I don't.
And I'm not saying it's the right thing, wrong thing. I'm just saying I recognize it. I just don't know how they don't do it. That's with all the dumb moves that they've made on top of that. And they've made some dumb moves. I still don't think that they should have fired Frank Reich.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough situation because obviously things weren't working under Frank Reich, but at the same time, as Mike said, it's not like the organization did much better. They've invested a ton of money in the offensive line, and that unit has been pitiful. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. They've tried to bring in one. I don't know about one and done quarterbacks, but they've tried to bring in the veteran quarterbacks. That hasn't worked. So I think that they will. I do think Jim Irsay will at least give Jim Harbaugh a call and see if and engage his interest level. But my concern, if I'm the Colts, is I don't know how interested Jim Harbaugh is because I don't know that this is a quick fix. If you are going to get a young quarterback, if you're going to draft a rookie quarterback and invest in him, that means it's probably going to take 2 to 3 years. So is that something Jim Harbaugh would be willing to leave Michigan? Like we said, they're up and running now. They are the premier team in the Big Ten. They are just a few plays away from competing for a national championship. So they're right there. Would he be willing to live that for the NFL? And the other part of this, too, is every offseason we've heard about this, about Jim Harbaugh having interest, quote unquote, in the NFL. I'm not convinced he has interest. But strictly from the standpoint that you're talking about, the Colts would be dumb not to at least call and see what his interest level would be. Would be dumb not to.
Yeah, I agree. He's turned Michigan around, like you said. He has them playing at the top. They've won back-to-back Big Ten titles. Not a bad time to walk away. You're on top.
True. Right.
You did what you came to do. You didn't win a national championship is the only thing. that he didn't do. But that's a very, very difficult chore to ask of anyone. But he got them back to the pinnacle. He's beat Ohio State for back-to-back years and accomplishing that on top of that. So there's just all that. Kidda says the coach job is not desirable because they need a quarterback, but the quarterbacks in the draft are suspect. Of course, a new coach is going to want to change direction, but you're pigeonholed into drafting quarterbacks and losing. I think that there's some truth to that, but everything is changeable.
I don't know about – I agree with most of what Ken just said. I don't know about pigeonholed. I mean, I don't think –
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that you're always open to change.
Right. And I think the Colts, here's what I think, and this is kind of my fear, is that they're not going to take a quarterback just to take a quarterback. I don't think. Like, if they don't think a quarterback is a franchise player, then they'll kick the can down the road for another year, as dreadful as that sounds, and wait until next year's draft class and see if they can get the quarterback they want. I truly believe that. I don't think they're going to just grab Will Levis because Will Levis is available. Like, I wouldn't do that, because then you're investing at least a 4-year contract into somebody who you don't have faith can lead your organization. So it's going to be very interesting. The number one priority should be to draft a quarterback, but I don't think they're pigeonholed, because I don't think they're going to just take a quarterback to take a quarterback like we've seen some of these other organizations do.
I wish we were flying around the Jetsons' little cars, and that would be cool. I mean,
it would be.
You
can nap.
That'd be like, it would actually be like living in Europe, though, where you just jump on a train and go wherever you want and be in a different country in 40 minutes.
True.
So there's that. Doug just said he came back from the future for 30 years, and Purdue is still without a national championship. That seemed to be that caught some people gave them a little funny.
There you go.
But yeah, there's just so much going on the college and the change, though. See, all this stuff that we're talking about, the change is coming too. The playoff. One question I have in regards to the 12-team playoff, we know what they do with the semi games, their rotation of the 5 big bowls or whatever. What is, surely that's going to be a part of the 12-team playoff, I would think, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think so. From my understanding, and maybe they still have to work some of this out, but my understanding is the first round would be home games to the higher seeded team. The top 4 teams will get a bye. The first round would be home teams, and then the next round would be then basically play as it is, which is designate bowl games. So you're still getting those bowl games. You're getting an extra.
Actually, that would leave 5 games left, right? No, it would leave more than that.
You're probably right. I'd have to do the math, because you would go from, if you have 4 teams that are in the bye, then you would have 8 teams. So you'd have 8 teams. It'd be an 8-team playoff from that point forward. So I don't know.
4 games, then 2 games, then 1 game, right?
Yeah. So you go 4 games, 2 games, 1 game.
Oh yeah, 4.
So 11 games.
That first round at home, so then you jump up to the next round. There are 5 major bowl games, right? Is it 5 major?
Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl.
They'd have to add a bowl game into that to kind of create that.
Yeah,
and they could make
that's a
that
good
swing.
question.
I think they could add one and make that entire thing, and then the last game is just the national championship game. It's not a bowl game.
Right. I think what they'll probably do is rope in places like AT&T Stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium, maybe Ford Field. They'll probably rope in some of these stadiums and just play games. And they won't have any trouble getting sponsorship and creating a new bowl game, if you will. So that would be my guess as to what happens. I don't think they're going to turn the Pinstripe Bowl into a college football playoff game. I think what will probably
they would have to first turn it into the Pinstripe Bowl into a decent damn bowl game.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
That's yeah.
But even this, maybe the Citrus Bowl, maybe something like that could get some traction. The Peach Bowl, that's another one, so that's 6.
Well, that's in there. Yeah, the Peach Bowl is one of them. Peach
Right.
Bowl, Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl.
Orange Bowl.
Oh, Orange Bowl. There's 6 right there.
Yeah. So there you go.
Boom. Sold. So there you go. That's perfect.
We worked it
We've
out.
got perfect. We got to take a break. Yeah, we got it all figured out. We're done. We did all the NCAA's work. So, but we got to take a break. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by our good friends from Endeavor Hospitality's Wild Club, Metalworks Brewing Company, located just off of the square in Bloomington, and available at all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. But in the former Function Brewery location, just off of 6th Street there, catty corner from Cabello Restaurant, also a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Club. So join us. We're back here in a little bit.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
I should let you two do this segment now, and I'll come back at the very end.
There we
Where
go.
are you going?
I'm not leaving. I'm kidding.
Are we is this a short segment, John?
This will be the next 2, since we're still catching up, will be shorter.
Okay. I've got to
We have
jump
2
out at
segments? We
10,
still have
10.
2 segments?
Yeah, we're going to 10:30. We're back on normal today.
I know, but I
Normal.
thought, what time is it? Oh,
It's
God.
10 o'clock.
Why did we get off segments? What happened?
You took Mike DeCourcy for like 50 minutes.
Really?
We always
Not
do.
all in one time, but combined. You went long with him twice, is what I'm getting at.
Oh,
We went learn.
But it's okay. I
That's
mean,
because Mike can talk about anything. Literally
yeah,
anything.
exactly.
well, I wanted to do that.
What is
Yeah,
this?
you should. I mean, the fact that they're shorter should make it easier. 2 shorter segments, and then we'll end the show.
This will be my last segment.
This will be the
Okay.
last time that you see me.
I hate All right, this is your segment, Dustin. Whatever you want.
Whatever I want.
Yep.
Oh boy.
I think you and John should do it.
What do you want to talk about, John Boy?
I haven't thought about it, so I don't know.
Well, think about it.
I'm thinking.
Jim, I have other things that I'm doing. If you're here, you should be doing your show.
I got it.
I'm here. Obviously, I'm here.
I'll do the last segment with you, Jim, when Dustin leaves.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm
There
trying
you
to get
go.
the rest of the stuff taken care of before Dustin leaves.
No.
That sounds like a winner.
What sounds like a winner?
That sounds like a win.
All right, we're back in 30 seconds.
near Cabello is locally owned and operated by Endeavor Hospitality Group. Launched from a previous staple in Bloomington, the former Function Brewery, Metalworks Brewing Company is the culmination of a passion for beer, food, and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste what Dr. Hops is brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Well, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill down in Bedford. Great place to catch a ball game, go for lunch, take the family. Cajun cuisine that is outstanding, all freshly made. I've had it. It's great.
Do you feel like you're on a
Appreciate
spaceship yet? I had to keep this music bed running.
I like
No.
it. I did not even put that together, but that's a great feels like futuristic music here.
I did not, but it does a little futuristic. Pete pointing out the Pacers won 4 in a row. not only that, 6 out of 7, man.
That ain't
That's
bad.
what my man Dustin said. Kenneth wants to talk about how soft Purdue is or how they lack leadership. I think you better look at Indiana's team if you want to talk about being soft and lacking leadership. That's I don't. Purdue is not what I'd call soft at all.
Well, Matt Painter did say that last night, though. He did say
you do that. You do that to challenge your team.
That's
There's
true.
a purpose you do that. You do that to challenge your team.
Here's
they may have played, but it's also you certainly see that in your team when you're playing a team like Rutgers because they are absolutely not that. They are ready to play game in, game out. You talked about Mike DeCourcy hit it right on hit the nail on the head. He said there's a difference between playing hard and playing your hardest.
Right. Yeah, he brought up a great point.
That's the
there.
difference.
And I think what's interesting what's going to be interesting about Purdue, and Ken brings up how they can't shoot. That part is very true. That part is also very concerning because it's become a trend. Yeah.
You don't go 13-0 not being able to shoot. And I remember just pulling stats together last week, I think, that said the otherwise. So I'm not agreeing with that.
I've got some.
I think people are getting all excited because they lost a game, man. No one thought that they're going undefeated, and I'm not rooting on Purdue or whatever. But I'm just keeping it honest. It's not. Yeah, it's.
I agree.
Indiana has shown me to be just as soft, and they haven't shot worth a crap at games when they needed to, in the games where they needed to. So
I agree and disagree. I think I'm not overly concerned, but at the same time, Purdue's shooting recently has not been great. That is an issue that they're going to have to try. I don't know if they're going to be able to counter that because with Zach Edey or not. But here's something I wanted to ask Mike, and I didn't get the chance to. What has been interesting for me is since that Nebraska game, Purdue has looked like a different team. And I mean that not in a positive way. Like I think Nebraska laid out the blueprint as to how you beat Purdue. And that is you pressure their guards. You don't lay off of Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And then when Zach Edey gets the ball in the post, you move him around. If you have to foul him 37 times in the game, you foul him 37 times. If you double team him, throw different looks at him, throw different bodies at him. That's what Nebraska did. And they almost got the upset last month. And since then, teams have played Purdue a lot tougher. They followed that blueprint. And Rutgers is a tougher defensive team than Nebraska is. And that's why they were able to win, even though they didn't shoot the ball that well.
I agree with you. And there is because of their youth, I think that they are very susceptible to be defended into poor shooting. I think that's more likely, and that's going to continue. And Rutgers, man, they defended the crap out of Purdue, and they got up in those freshmen's face, and boy, it was like, oh man, and they took away their passing lanes, and they did make shooting more difficult on them. Their freshmen are going to have to grow up. There's no question if they're going to be successful. And there's going to be more nights where people are able to get Zach Edey into foul trouble. Indiana is a team that should be able to get Zach Edey into foul trouble, that should be able to take advantage of that. I think Indiana matches up better against Purdue than a lot of other teams right now, and especially if Tamar Bates can continue to grow in his role because he's going to be starting. I hate thinking about things that are that far off, but what happens when Xavier comes back? If this Tamar thing starts to work, then they'll have to adjust to that, but that's down the road to worry about. Indiana fans can just hope right now that Tamar continues to grow in his role. Because if that happens, that makes this team, it gives the Indiana team an element they have not had. They haven't shown, and that they have lacked and needed it a lot. And I think just maybe getting that start does that. Maybe that gives him that boost of confidence. Yeah. And again, what Mike said, Hell yes, it matters who's starting. Whoever says it doesn't matter who starts, I just don't know where they come up with that. Then if it doesn't matter who starts, then why the hell don't you start the 5 worst players you have?
Exactly. Well, that's Mike broke it down. Mike broke it down in a way that I had never heard before, and he brought up a great point. That's 10 minutes of the game. That's basically that's a full quarter. So you're surrendering a full quarter then of not playing your best basketball. So that is why it matters. And I understand the argument that Indiana needs something off the bench, but at the same time, you've got to try to get off to faster starts in these games and then hope your bench can come in. And I think Trey Galloway is a great bench player. I don't know that he's meant to be a starting guard, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to have guys who are comfortable coming in off the bench and being a role player, and he might just be that guy. And we'll see what happens with this Tamar Bates situation. I think it's a positive. The most positive thing about it, Jim, is that it shows that Mike Woodson is willing to make a change. He says, you know what, this is not working.
Well, his hand was forced finally. I mean, he had to make a change finally.
He didn't. He didn't have to.
Who was with us? Well, no, but who was it that said? I think it was yesterday. Someone said it looks like their hand has been forced, or maybe that was previous last week. I forget, but
I mean that
actually,
might be true.
Someone had said, and this was, I forget who said it on the show here that I think his hand is being forced. And this was before it was announced that Tamar was going to be starting, because that was just announced last night on Mike Woodson's show.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, maybe it was forced. I don't know, but it's whatever it is, it's a positive. Because I don't know. There aren't a lot of guys that I think you can insert into the starting lineup. We had this conversation with Dustin DeCourcy a few weeks ago, in that who has proven that they deserve a starting spot over some of these guys. And I think Tamar Bates fits that category, and I think he can provide that spark. Now, we'll see. I would not hit the panic button based on how he starts against Iowa, because, again, 2 weeks, I'm more interested to see what they do defensively in those first 8 minutes and what they do offensively, because it's going to take some time when you haven't played competition. But I'm really intrigued to see what Tamar Bates can do as a starting guard for Indiana, because I do think offensively he gives them something that they desperately need in early in games.
And more importantly, I'd like to see what it does with this offense, what it does for someone like Trace Jackson Davis, who is relatively limited to his certain area of play. And so Indiana needs the passing lanes opened up. They need the spacing to be opened up. And so that outside shooting has got to come, not just outside shooting, but a threat that from outside to get to the rim from the perimeter, an added threat. Jalen Hood-Schifino has that, but they need more. You have to respect a guy that can shoot the three and get to the rim at the same time. And they lost that somewhat with Exon, but Tamar can give them that back.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, he's the guy that can fill it up quickly. He can. I don't want to say easily, but he's the guy that can fill it up quickly. He can catch fire, and that's something that Indiana they have guys that can shoot. I don't want to say that, but they need more guys that can score on the floor at one time, because that's been an issue. I think defensively, I think this team can be really good, but the problem I've seen, at least in a couple games, has been when they're not scoring, that then affects their defense. And I know Arizona's an outlier, because Arizona can run up and down the floor with anybody and cause problems for anybody. The Rutgers game, look, I don't know. After watching Rutgers play Purdue on the road last night, I have a different feeling about this Indiana team. I mean, I was tough on them. We still need to see some things. I still want to see some toughness, but Rutgers might be the toughest team in the Big Ten. And as Mike said, that doesn't mean they're the best team, but it's hard to win some of those tough games. And especially when they were in their first game without Jalen Hood-Schifino, I got a little bit more optimism now, but you've got to see it on Thursday against Iowa. You got to see that toughness in that game.
I was going to say, well, Thursday night, tomorrow night, they'll give you the first opportunity. What do they, besides winning, what do they have to do? What do you want to see them do?
I don't want to see them get beat dramatically on the boards. I want to see them crash the boards. I want them to look like they know what they're doing offensively. And then, again, you can control your effort for 40 minutes. If you miss some shots early in this game, don't let it affect your defense. We saw last night. Both teams, Purdue and Rutgers, they stayed in it. Both teams stayed in that game because of their defense. When they weren't shooting the ball well, they were able to stay in it because they got after it defensively. If Indiana can do that, I think that they have a great shot to win no matter how they're shooting the basketball. But that's been an issue to me, has been if we're not scoring, we're having trouble defending. And that they're going to have times when they can't shoot. It's just the nature of the game. You're going to have times when you can't shoot. Can you go back and rely on your defense to win you some basketball games? They were able to do it at times last year. They beat Purdue. They beat Ohio State. They won some games in the Big Ten tournament. But can they do it this year when they're shorthanded? That's what I want to see. The offense, I'm willing to give them an extra game because of this long layoff. How do they look on the defensive side?
My question is, why are they getting out rebounded this year?
That's a good question. Yes.
Mike Whitson says rebounding is simply effort and heart.
Yes.
So that's why earlier I said to Mike about is this NIL helping making guys soft? Because these same guys that were doing what they were doing last year are not doing the same things this year, but who knows? We've got to take a break, let our man go. Dustin, buddy, we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks a lot. And we'll be back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our good friends from Cabello Restaurant, located on the square in Bloomington, a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Network. You can taste the great taste and traditions of Southern Italy right there in Southern Indiana. Cabello, located on the square. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I say it's Arizona number one next week unless they lose. Right?
Let me look.
Is Arizona number 2 right now?
Let's take a look.
And we had the new poll come out yesterday, didn't we?
I haven't seen it, but I believe so. So we'll take a look at it here. Let's see. No, it hasn't come out yet. The AP poll's not. Let's see if the coaches poll is new yet. Yeah, the new. Well, no, it didn't. Well, so it came out yesterday, but obviously that was before Purdue lost.
That's okay, though. Who's number 2?
And then the AP poll was 2 days ago, so I guess, yeah, it did. So we'll look at the AP poll. Houston was number 2. Kansas was number 3. UConn was number 1. And then Arizona was number 5.
You just said UConn was number 1.
Sorry. I was looking. They had 1 receiving vote. They were number 4.
They lost, too.
They lost before the new rankings, or they lost a couple days ago?
When did Xavier beat them? 2 nights ago?
They only shows they have 1 loss, so I think that was the one that you're talking about.
Well, Xavier lost to Indiana, so it does not include UConn.
No, I'm talking about UConn's 1 loss.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We can go through this poll if you want.
Yes.
Kentucky's out of the top 25.
That is amazing. I know, that's funny. Is North Carolina still out?
Let's take a look. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't even look like they're receiving votes right now, unless I'm mistaken.
I'd be surprised
they're not.
Because they're kind of coming around.
Maybe they haven't shown anyone that they're top 25 worthy yet, I guess. But yeah, they're not even receiving votes right now. That's interesting. All right, we'll have about 11 minutes to fill here.
Oh, man.
All right, here we go.
Stone with their love of Southern eateries. With quality, local, and organic food as their main focus, Southern Stone strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Tuesday, January 3rd of 2023. Jim Coyle with you. John, the producer, as well. The AP, the new polls are out, AP and coaches polls. Of course, they came out before before the Purdue game, which no biggie. But I guess Houston will be number one next. I was thinking it would be Arizona, but Houston, they're still undefeated, aren't they?
No, I believe in terms of teams that are in the top 25, the only team currently in it that's undefeated is number 21 New Mexico at 14-0. Houston took a loss to Alabama about a week or so ago.
And that's I know that Dustin brought them up yesterday, New Mexico with Richard Catino, but they might not even win their own league, though. They're not going to win their own league. Maybe it's tough.
The Mountain West is what they're in, I believe.
Yeah. So I think that Houston will probably be in there because, as Kenneth says, they don't have a tough game coming up, so they'll probably slide into that spot. Does it? And which is ironic. You got Kelvin Sampson sitting at the number one spot. And a lot of IU fans still have carrying that torch of anger towards him, which cracks me up a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't
other
blame him
Big Ten teams scattered throughout the poll. We've got number 14 Wisconsin 10-2, right behind them Indiana number 15 10-3, Ohio State cracking the top 25 at number 24. They're previously unranked, and then receiving votes Illinois with 21, Michigan State with 5, and then our good friends below the border, the Kentucky Wildcats, drop out of the poll. Have only 53 votes. Thankfully, they got a little break this past week as they got to play their lowly rival, the Louisville Cardinals, who still only have 2 wins on the season.
You know what? I didn't even pay attention to that game.
That's the thing, because there's no fanfare around it.
What was the result?
86-60. They won by about 23 points. It was a 23-point game. They barely covered the spread, I believe, which was also the largest spread in the history of the U of L UK rivalry.
Well, there's no surprise. I mean, Louisville's never been quite this bad. And there's really there's no reason for them to be that bad, but that's their problem to deal with.
If you were betting on Louisville's overall win total for the rest of the season, what would you set it at?
How many ACC games are there?
They've already played 2. They play the same amount as the Big Ten, and they've already played 2 of them. Yeah.
So they've got 18 more.
I believe so.
I'm sure that they'll pick up 2, maybe 3 more wins.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Set the over-under at, 5 maybe? Or 4.5?
5, 5.5, 5.5. That would be
just crazy. Will Kenny Payne manage to have a worse first year than Tom Crean?
I was thinking that at the beginning of the season. I'm like, are they going to exceed that? And that would be much worse for Louisville because Indiana had nobody. They had 2 walk-ons or 2 scholarship players, and the rest all walk-ons.
If I remember, Kyle Tabor, was he the only scholarship player on that first roster with Tom Crean?
Something like that. It was just nuts, and that is not the talent Louisville has. Louisville has talent. I mean, I'm not saying
a lot
that
of
they've
young
got
talent,
top
a lot of
25
4-star,
talent, but
3-star guys, and that's why it's so baffling to so many people. That's why they're really focused on the coaching job that Kenny Payne's doing with. I mean, because Kenny Payne, being a former assistant at Kentucky, is used to having talented players, even though he's never been the head man at Kentucky. A lot of people thought he'd be able to use what he had from Chris Mack and at least get something out of it, and he hasn't been able to.
Who did he coach under?
Calipari.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. See, there's the issue. I don't think the Calipari can coach very well. He can out-talent people. He's always out-talented people, and that was it. Who does he out-coached? In what game, going back to, oh, man, he sure out-coached them. You don't hear that. There's a reason why you don't hear that, in my opinion. I mean, I think he manages well. I think he's a really good manager. He should have been a much better professional coach because he manages. But he wasn't successful there. But that's neither here nor there. Philip says Louisville has one true guard. Well, that doesn't help things.
No, that was a lot of people's biggest complaint, is that they have L. Ellis, and that's about it. Kenny Payne was unable to get a real guy to back him up in the portal. And so that they really just struggled with the guard position. They have a couple decent big guys, but whenever you're that easy to, like, that's your main focus, you don't have to worry about the perimeter players. I mean, that's made it really easy for the opponents to defend.
Oh, man, what's your pulling the Dustin on you? You got some New Year's resolutions ready to go?
New Year's resolutions?
Not me, baby.
I've never really been kind of like you. I think you said you don't really do New Year's resolutions. I try to set goals for the year. I didn't actually. Last year, I put them down on pen and paper and stuff like that.
Really? Well, that's actually very impressive.
This year, I didn't do that because I found out last year I made too many goals that seemed like they were unrealistic, and so I didn't want to try to hold myself to too high of a standard. And I think that I achieved certain things to an extent, but everyone always makes their goals too lofty, whether it's losing weight or career goals and stuff like that. I'm happy with where I ended 2022, but I think there's always room for improvement.
Some comments on the Andy Moore Honda hotline about the return of Xavier and when that will be, and timelines are being thrown out, which I'm not throwing any timelines out because there's no point in dealing in rumors, and dealing in rumors does not do us any good here because it's got to be factual. So, you know what? He'll return when he returns. So I don't look at it that way. I'm like, whenever that happens, great. There's the here and the now that they have to deal with. But then my question is, then what happens when he does come back? How are you going to manage? This is going to be, again, a different team. You started the team one way, and then you've had to switch it to this way. And now you're going to switch it back to what it was, or offensively, flow-wise. I still like having Tamar on the floor as opposed to having both Xavier and Jalen Hood-Schifino on there at the same time. Not that they're not good together. I think this could be better for better spacing, but it'll depend on how he does, how Tamar does, shooting the ball for one thing, handling this role.
It's really just kind of a glimpse into what next year is going to be like anyway. You're not going to have Xavier Johnson, and obviously we don't know what the overall outlook of the roster will look like when you don't know who's going to stay, who's going to transfer, and all that good stuff. But if you retain most of the guys who are eligible to come back, I mean, you're going to see a lineup similar to what you're going to see during these next several games while Xavier is out.
And not only that, I know that there are certain things you could do to try to maintain your cardio during this time. It's not the same. It's not basketball. It's not playing, 30 minutes of basketball cardio. And there's just a lot that goes into it. So when he's back, I don't think there's any point in speculating. Phillips said that Illinois lost former not Indiana player, but Indiana high school player Luke Goody to what you think is the same injury. He's been out since right before the season, and he is not back yet. But we don't know what the exact injury is, and I know that he had surgery on his foot. So I don't have to worry. I don't get caught up in that stuff because, like I said, it is what it is, and it'll happen when it happens. They need to deal in the here and the now, and that is at Iowa on Thursday night. And that means they need to have their butts on the boards, rebounding, and playing the hardest they can play.
1 minute. Not
playing hard, but playing the hardest they can play, as our friend Mike DeCourcy said. Hey, and speaking of Mike DeCourcy, big thanks to him from the Sporting News as BT analyst as well. Also, big thanks to Dustin, our co-host, and John, the producer. But most importantly, of course, we thank you guys, man. Cannot do this without you. Look forward to it each and every day. And we're back in the main studio tomorrow. Man, it's been a hiatus, but I think everything is fixed and we're ready to go. So looking forward to that. And so appreciate you guys so much. And I hope you go out and have yourselves a great, great day. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.